I am doing a PhD in neurodegenerative diseases. So I work on human patients with disorders in the brain. But I think this conversation is going to be more about my rescue work with animals. So that's what I'll focus on. I've got, so there are two NGOs one's called Pause for a Cause that I'm a co-founder of, and our main focus at Pause for a Cause is to mediate and coordinate adoptions of abused and abandoned animals as well as street animals, focusing on dogs and cats. And the other NGO called Dogs of Delhi is something we started about 3 years ago, and the focus is to spay, neuter, and vaccinate street dogs across of Delhi NCR. So until now, we've sterilized about almost 9,000 dogs in Delhi, and honestly, like that's the best way you can have a long-lasting impact on the street dog population, because puppies that are born on the street almost always die before they reach 6 months of age. So, and it's also good for their health. It's good for the dogs to be sterilized. It increases their lifespan. So that's the focus of my organization, Dogs of Delhi.
Okay, that's very interesting because, so how are you able to manage your, what you're doing as a profession along with the work that you're doing for animal welfare?
It's a lot of balance. So honestly, like I'm not in the country right now. I'm doing my PhD in Germany, and it's basically just these two things that I'm doing constantly. So if I'm not working, so I go in the morning. I work from about 9 to 7. Apart from that, I'm just coordinating things. So like sort of talking to people. Potential adopters, volunteers, ground volunteers who are there for our pickups for spay neuter, and just sort of internal coordination and running. So PFAC is a huge team of over 100 people. So kind of, and obviously I don't manage it alone. There's a whole core team that's helping manage that. And DOD, although is just me and one more person, Akrita. So the two of us run it, and it's a lot of coordination that goes into that. So it's not easy, and apart from just time management, it's a lot of emotional investment. Because I don't just treat them like numbers. These are like real lives that we're dealing with constantly. Sometimes they fall ill, sometimes they need certain special care or whatever. I need a foster, and or things don't work out. Somebody adopted a dog and it didn't work out, things like that. So it's just constant dealing with emergency situations. So yeah, it takes a lot of and it's something you can't, even if you try to take a break, you can't 100% check out. Once you're in, you're kind of in. So
right. I mean, that is something that I wanted to talk to you about. So I know that I've heard a lot of social activists talk about how difficult it is to fight for the same cause every day. And it just makes me think, don't you get tired? Isn't there a period of fatigue where you feel like, I can't do this anymore, I want to give up?
Yeah, every day. So I'm just, it's exhausting. Like I said, emotionally exhausting. We've lost lives. No matter how much you try, sometimes you rescue a dog in such a mangled state that, and even if you've not met that animal, you've spent so many hours trying to just sort of make sure that they're okay. It's a lot of emotional distress that you're constantly in, hoping things go well, or dealing with it when they don't. So it's constant. Apart from the emotional fatigue, it's also within every kind of work that you do, there's a lot of like internal politics. There's always people who will try to bring you down. So there's a lot of other things that you deal with as well. Even though this shouldn't be the case in something like rescue, there's competition, there's people doing it for the wrong reasons, and stuff like that. So it's definitely very taxing.
Okay, all right. So,
but it's also very, very, very rewarding. Sorry.
I'm sure.
It's very rewarding because it's you see a little bit of effort, a few hours of your effort, change the life completely. There's so many of these animals that wouldn't survive. And they're in this position because of us, right? We have a lot of, like, as a species, to take blame. So yeah, it's definitely something I don't want to ever stop doing, but that doesn't mean every other day I don't think of giving up, because it's just very taxing emotionally.
Right. I can imagine, because I can't imagine doing this kind of work every day. I mean, we, like you said, as a species, need to be more responsible for our actions, not just when it comes to animals, but also other things like the environment in general. So that just makes me think, what drives you to do this every day? Like you said that, you think about giving up every other day, but you still continue doing it. You still continue working for it. So what makes you do that?
Just the fact that I know now I have the expertise, I have the resources, so how can I not help? How can I not?
Right.
I'm not more valuable than these lives are. So how can I, if I know what needs to be done, if I know somebody who can help, if I know what the correct thing to do is, how can I just say, because of my own mental health, I'm just going to back out of it? So it's just something I can't get myself to do. If I'm at a restaurant, you come and tell me that I found this injured kitten and I know exactly what needs to be done, I'm not going to say, let me enjoy my meal and then come back to you. I'll immediately want to give you that help.
Yeah.
So it's just that now that I have that means, I want to not waste it. So yeah. And also, like I said, it's very rewarding. Like, that what you're doing has real and immediate outcome. And not always is it immediate in the next hour or something. It takes months to get somebody back on track in terms of a dog or a cat. But yeah, I think they are worth that effort. So
Yeah, I think it's very pure and wholesome to hear you talk about this, because I don't think that at least we in India give so much importance to street dogs or cats, like you said. So, do you think that it's because of the cultural difference that we have a different mindset when it comes to causes like animal welfare?
So, I mean, I started this when I was in India. I had no exposure to being overseas when I started it. And I think, in fact, when you're in India, you're like, in a way, immune, because you've grown up seeing these dogs.
Yeah.
But in another way, you see direct cruelty, you see direct suffering, So I think there's different ways to look at it. But for sure, I think how I started doing it was also like, I was just seeing. So I started interning at a vet's clinic in South Delhi back in school. I think we had this biology project that we had to do, and I did it in 11th grade. So this was about 9-10 years ago. And when I was at this clinic and I was there for 2 months, I used to see this disparity of these fancy puppies coming in, breeders, etc. And then there's these puppies outside the clinic who are just suffering. So I'm just like, why are we, even if you're thinking environmentally, creating more and more beings into the cycle of suffering, whereas others sit and die? It just doesn't make sense. So I think when you're in India, you can actually really see that. So there is a cultural difference. Like here, in Germany, there are no street dogs. So yeah, so I mean, so there's all kinds of people. Like in India, there's people who literally like would mock somebody trying to help a street dog. But there's also a lot of great people doing amazing work, and I started doing it when I was in India. And of course, like while I've been abroad, I've learned a lot of other things, a lot of other sort of schools of thought. But yeah, I don't think you need to be, I don't think the culture in India prevents one from caring about street animals.
Right. So, is this something that you always wanted to do, or did it just come up? I mean, is it different from what you thought your career path would be like when you were, let's say, in school or college?
As in school, I wanted to be a vet. So, and I didn't do it because I hated I think before we started this interview, we also spoke about vet schools in India.
Right.
And, so the problem in India is a lot of people end up going to vet school because they didn't get into human medicine, which is the
Mm-hmm.
wrong reason to get into that
Right.
field. And also, I mean, I may be wrong because I've not really gone to vet school in India, but what I've heard as feedback is I did not like the curriculum. So I wanted to do a course called DVM, which is
Okay.
offered in one school in Australia, one school in Utrecht in Netherlands, and then in the US. And I
Okay.
honestly just couldn't afford it. It was a very expensive course, and I couldn't afford it. So so I didn't end up doing that, and honestly I'm grateful that I didn't end up doing it, because I feel I want a career where it's separate from rescue, because if you're in it 100% for real, then it just takes a major toll on you. So and I love what I'm doing now. I love working with genetic data, which is what I'm working on right now. So my career path's not all that different. I still read a lot on animal medicine as well, because it's easier for me to go through these scientific papers, because I do
Right.
have that kind of
Yeah.
bend of knowledge. But yeah, but it's definitely, I'm not a vet. I've worked with vets, but I'm not one. So yeah, it is different. I mean, at one point I wanted to be a chef as well, and I love cooking. So I cook a lot of food. But yeah, so
I've seen that. I've seen that on Instagram.
yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, that's great. You know, that you are grateful for where you are now, even though it's not where you intended to be earlier. And
Yeah.
I think that just goes to show that whatever happens, happens for a reason. Because, now you're able to manage two NGOs along with your career, which I think is a pretty big achievement. Would you say that working with these NGOs gave you a range of skills which you wouldn't have gained otherwise? I mean, what do you think about being an expert generalist?
For sure. I think working a big team like this helps you in a lot of ways, communication, leadership, just sort of being able to not only manage and lead, but also, just be a friend to your teammates, having that kind of, there's a lot of aspects to being in a team, being a team player.
Right.
In fact, right after tomorrow, not after this, tomorrow we've organized like a check-in with the team. So it's not just about the work we do, but also kind of making sure we're all doing okay, things like that. So there's a lot of things you learn when you're running something like this, not just this, but collaborations, working with people outside your team,
Yeah.
how that works, how the communication needs to happen. Apart from collaboration, there's obviously marketing that comes with everything. Even if it's a rescue or an NGO, you want to be able to get your work out there. You want
Right.
to, one, spread a message, and two, also just get more support. We need funds, we need volunteers, we
Right.
recruit regularly. So recruitment is another skill that I've picked up, taking like interviews, talking to people, training them. So we have a mentor mentee system.
Okay.
um,
Nice.
so yeah, so it's a lot of skills that you kind of learn. It's like when you run any organization, you learn a lot of things. So recruitment, communication, collaboration, marketing, all of that. And it's regular. You run different campaigns. We've had physical campaigns, adoptathons, or we've had online campaigns, webinars, whatever, what have you, to kind of just spread that message, and get to different types of audiences. So young people, we try to go to schools,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So it's a lot of skill development, I think. And like even when I go to interviews, I think more than my actual scientific work, we end up talking about this a lot, because yeah.
Right, right. So, you were talking about collaborations, and I was just about to ask you. You said that, there are a lot of people in India who are doing great work. So, do you get a chance to collaborate with them?
Yeah, so we do collaborate with many people. We collaborate with individuals as well as shelters, etc. Because shelters are so busy with sort of doing the actual handiwork that we
Right.
try to help them with things like adoptions, and to get more dogs out of there so that they can have space and resources to help more. So we do collaborate with shelters. We also collaborate with influencers who can sort of help us get the message
Right.
out, or companies that produce merchandise to be able to
Okay.
stuff like that. So Yeah, and we also collaborate with sometimes things like restaurants to have adoption drives. We would have to collaborate with a restaurant to have get their space,
Mm-hmm.
or with boardings that keep dogs. So we have a few trusted boardings. I also for DoD, I also collaborate with multiple NGOs. So our idea at Dogs of Delhi is that we don't reinvent the wheel. We just sort of
Yeah, yeah,
use existing resources.
makes
So
sense.
we've collaborated with a bunch of NGOs as well as private vets. And we use their resources and we make sure we pay them for it, because a lot of NGOs people take for granted. They think they should just keep doing free work for them.
Mm.
And that's when they burn out and can no longer help because they don't have the means to do it. So our idea is to use existing resources but make sure we give back to them. um, and that's what we do. And it takes a lot of communication, to work with a completely different team constantly.
Mhm.
But that's the idea behind it. So it's not to have my own center doing spay neuter, maybe one day, but right now
Yeah.
there's so many that are just going unused because they don't have money to keep running. So idea was to fuel them, give them money not just to do these surgeries, but also use that money for other rescues, for feeding their animals, whatever they need it for. So yeah, I think collaboration is a huge part of rescue work. You can't do it alone.
Right, right. I'm sure that
Yeah.
collaboration helps you help more dogs. Like you said that you helped over 9,000 dogs, I think.
Spay neuter, yes. And we've got about 600 dogs adopted.
Okay, that's awesome.
Cats.
Because I remember the last time I spoke to you, I think you were just crossing 1,000, if I'm not wrong. Um,
Maybe.
this was, I think, like this was back in college. I remember when I texted and asked you about it, you said that it was around 1,000. So it's pretty good to hear that you've reached 9,000. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that makes me think that, since NGOs are doing their bit, what can we as individuals do on a personal level to help you guys out?
To help NGOs out, I think most of the NGOs require two things. One is dedicated volunteers who are willing to actually come and
Right.
be part of the team. And the other is funds. Funds are a major limiting factor. So, I think Facebook has these options, and a lot of people now, I do this every birthday, not just for my own organization, but for other organizations as well. Every birthday I ask people, instead of giving me gifts, make a donation to this NGO instead. And I think that's a great way to help. And it's obviously not, I mean, with coronavirus, it's been a problem. A lot of people have lost jobs,
Right.
salary cuts. So it's difficult to donate. And right now, that's a major setback that we're all facing right now. There's funds have gone, we pay for so much of our work out of our pockets that it's nuts. So yeah, so funds really helps. If you can organize a fundraiser for any NGO, that would be an amazing way to help, or to organize any kind of drives, cleaning drives if you're helping a shelter out. Or if you know resources, somebody who might be willing to collaborate with an NGO to help them out, then sort of get them in touch. And if you can literally do nothing at all, just share their posts, like them, comment on their posts, any kind of engagement, because Instagram has this horrible algorithm that doesn't let it hides your work. So the
Okay.
more the comments, the more the likes, the more it features on people's feed, even if you're
Yeah.
following them.
Right.
So just kind of support them, support them physically, visibly, so that their work gets out there and people who can help them can, do their bit. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that having a birthday fundraiser, it's a really
Yeah.
innovative way of helping out. So yeah, that is something that I was planning to do this year for my
Yeah.
birthday, and I was just thinking about how there are volunteers who would want to probably work for such organizations, but I don't know. I feel like there are a lot of things that act as barriers when they try to approach NGOs. Maybe, maybe it's because of the pandemic. I'm not sure, but I have seen a decline in the social activities. So, I mean, activities to help social causes. So, have you also noticed something similar? Do you think the pandemic has affected the work that you do?
In terms of people wanting to volunteer, I don't think so. In fact, a lot of people approached us more during the pandemic because they
Oh,
were freer
okay.
or they were at home, so they had the time. But in many ways, our functioning was reduced because we couldn't do pickups for a whole month and a half in between around April, May. We couldn't do any pickups for spay neuter then. And for adoptions, we usually do house checks and we meet the family before we let them
Right,
adopt an
right.
animal from
Yeah.
us. And we can't do that anymore. We can't go over to their houses because that's like a
Okay.
health hazard. So now we're switching to things like virtual meets, which obviously we're not that comfortable with anymore because you get a lot of sense in really meeting a person, I think, and sort of getting the vibe. So yeah, there's been like adjustments, but I don't think the will for people to work for social causes has reduced during the pandemic. Obviously, a lot of like I live alone and and you're in lockdown, so it does kind of overall put a sense of gloom on you, I think, and
Yeah.
if you're alone for long periods of time. And that may cause people to be less active in every aspect, not just social aspects, but other
Right.
aspects as well. Productivity just goes down. So yeah.
Okay, that's interesting because okay, so I have seen these checks that people conduct when they are when people want to adopt dogs and they have volunteers coming to the place. So have you ever conducted something like this personally?
Yeah, many times. I've done
Many
many
times.
house
Okay,
checks.
what is it like? I would love to know.
So the idea is to meet the whole family because you're adopting an animal. You want like that's somebody who's going to live in your life for the next probably 10 to 15 years unless you're adopting a very old one.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that everybody's on board because we don't want some aunt or somebody who's also living in the house later saying mujhe to nahi chahiye tha, why is this
Yeah, yeah.
and or they're scared and then the adoption fails. So you want to make sure that it's like bringing a family member to your house. So you want to make sure that literally everybody is on board, doesn't have a problem with it, doesn't have allergies. So all of that so the idea when I go over is to meet everybody who lives there, all the residents, including domestic help.
Mhm.
Um, and just have a conversation with them, what their schedules are like, who's going to walk the dog, what are they going to feed them, what is the vet who's the vet they're going to be consulting with, do they have prior experience with having a companion animal,
Right.
all of that, why do they want to adopt, just get a sense of that. Will so you get a lot, it's just a conversation. It's like if you were adopting out a human child, you want to make sure it's a responsible family. You want to make, and I've worked with that. My mom works at an orphanage called Palna.
Okay. Okay.
So it's in all honesty, it's a very similar process because you want to we rescue these animals with all our heart. So we want to make sure that they are taken care of in a similar manner once they've gone on. So yeah, so the idea is just to have a conversation, and then once we've had that, I would just sort of look around the house, make sure it's safe. If it's a cat that they're
Right.
adopting, then balconies have to be netted to make sure the cat doesn't
Okay.
run off, fall off, get paralyzed. So yeah, it's a lot of like specific things that we talk about. And then I would prepare a report, share it with my team. Then we would sort of take a call on whether we want to proceed with that house or not. Once we decide, a contract is signed, an adoption contract. So
Okay, wow, that's really thorough. I didn't know that there is so much of work that goes into it. Wow, that's
yeah.
amazing. I mean, it just shows that you really care about these animals and you actually want them to be in a better place. That's really good.
Yeah.
Okay, so Anupra, before we wrap up, so I would just like to know if you have any message for the audience, or is there a new project that you're working on, something that you'd like to share?
A message would be if you're, if you, wherever you live, whether it's in India, if you're in India, just sort of keep your eyes open. If you see a struggling animal on the streets or anywhere, just try to help out. And if you're already feeding them, then that's great. Make sure you also spay neuter them, vaccinate them. If you're looking to add to your family, please adopt and don't buy animals, because you're giving money into a very, very exploitative industry. And my projects, the spay neuter project is very much ongoing, and we constantly need support there. We need good volunteers as well as funds. Vaccinations is something we require funds for constantly as well. So if you want to donate, then it's called Dogs of Delhi Spay Neuter on Instagram and on Facebook. So you can just sort of write to us and get involved. If you want to adopt, then go to Pause for a Cause, NCR Adoptions. And yeah, my message is just to be a little kind, and whether it's for animals, whether it's for any cause, for the environment, whatever you're working on, just, I know it's good to be a specialist, but it's also good to have, our lives are not just producing value for our employer. It's also just we're born on this earth and sort of to give back a little bit. So yeah.
Oh, that was a really good message. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thank you for having me.
Help you increase the number of views on a post. We can maybe double it. Mine actually tripled. So I went from having anywhere around maybe 2,000 views to 6,000 views.